Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and we are in the Socrates and Jesus book because, oh my God, what a good book it is. It is such a banger. Wow. Last time we talked about how there is an activity that we can do, that we can look for and see and function in at all times. Let's turn off my mixer. Ooh. Oh Jesus, that was a noise. Sorry about that. We can turn this off. I should have done that first. Yes, there's an activity that we can do at all times called the dialectic. It's a way of thinking and seeing, but it's also something that is functioning throughout our entire universe because it's the structure of the logos. And the logos is the intelligibility of this reality we find ourselves in. And it's also through the logos that we can come to apprehend this intelligibility ourselves. And we do that through the dialectic. So the dialectic is a structure of thinking that reflects the structure of reality. It reflects the structure of all intelligible hierarchically arranged systems like music and math and other things. And of course, the highest use of that would be to the soul, because our soul is here to learn and develop. And if we want to understand the levels of development our soul can go through, we apply the dialectic. The same structure of the dialectic applies to the soul because we can recognize that there are stages of human development, stages of states of mind. There are some people who suck and some people who are awesome. And we can understand the levels of development along that paradigm. Or to put in other words, there are various levels of enlightenment as well. And we want to understand all of the levels of enlightenment and progress through it ourselves and help those we care to help to do that as well. So it's a single activity that we can do at all times and end up seeing through, just as we can see through the language that we've learned as a wee baby. People who study music and mathematics and things can end up seeing through the art that they have studied, perceive the world that way without thinking, and which can lead to this is also a kind of activity or a kind of learning that can affect our state of mind. So we end up seeing through the dialectic, which is a reflection of the intelligibility of reality. Intelligibility is a funny word. I talk about it. I explain it a lot because it's a weird one. It doesn't just mean logic. It is rational, but it's not just logic, which is a progression from a set of premises to a conclusion. No, it also includes things like beauty and justice. It also includes our soul's desire to seek these things and know ourselves in reality. It also, now that I'm turning this down, and it also includes the fact that we can apprehend the logos directly. It is something we can verify. It's not just a belief, and it's not just a hypothesis of understanding. So all of these things come together in the word intelligibility, and that's the logos. It's also the paradigm. If we want to harmonize our creations in the most beautiful way, well, we can look to the model of beauty itself. That's the logos. If we want to act in a just way, that's the paradigm or model that we would need to look at, because it's justice itself. So the apprehension of the logos all at once is that experience we call knowledge, or the brilliant light of being, and the capacity and the sense that we have, our sixth sense that we can use, that we can awaken by learning the dialectic and practicing the dialectic. That sense is called ousia. It's a Greek word because we don't have an English word for it. So let's borrow it and make it ours the same way we did for croissant. We can use the word croissant in English. And we can use the word ousia as the sixth sense that has the capacity to turn around and experience itself out or are different from our physical senses. So it doesn't, in the same way your eye sees color and your ears hear sound in the physical world, so too does ousia apprehend being, which is the non-physical realm. So there are some people who, this is an interesting thing, because what we've noticed is when looking at the stages of development, we have 5 on the board so far. The self, which is the highest state that we're after, that apprehending of the intelligibility of reality, or mind knowing itself completely all at once in the greatest, most profound and intense experience of beauty, justice, reality. In fact, all of the positive descriptors can be applied to it. That's the second state, called knowledge, or nous in the Greek. The third is the reflection of that through time. So our highest functioning that we can do through time, which is understanding, which is the dialectic, which is what we've been talking about, we're here to learn, which is a single activity that we can do at all times, because that knowledge, or nous, is the creator and model of our physical world, and it's the source of all of the principles of our physical world. So we can see the logos reflected in everything: music and math and personal development. So that's understanding. That's the third. Fourth is belief, of course, which is the source of problems, because it's a distorted reflection of knowing and understanding. People who cosplay knowing when they don't. And it's a state of conflict within your soul, because you have to, reject understanding and fight against understanding. So belief as a cognitive function is the source of all human problems. Now, there's a fifth state beyond that, called a massive difference. When you look at, let's say you grew up in a religious family and you realize all of these religious beliefs about God are bullshit and irrational and inconsistent with science, you might be inclined to say, and therefore there is no God. And then you leave belief, but you go down to a mass of difference. Now, the thing is, belief doesn't have a monopoly on the nature of the soul, or the nature of reality, or the nature of the divine. Just because someone, like for instance, if a fascist says, my idea of justice is the only view of justice, and you realize, holy shit, that's fascist, you don't therefore conclude, therefore there is no such thing as justice. Just because people in authority are lying about it and are getting it wrong doesn't mean the thing itself doesn't exist. So we want to be careful that we don't go down to that fifth stage called a massive difference. And that's the state of being of the modern Democratic Party. They have no principles, they have no idea of justice, they have no plan, they just shrug their shoulders and say, who knows? In other words, you leave belief without having addressed the effects of belief. Right? You've been swimming in the pool, you get out of the pool, but just because you're out of the pool, you're still wet. You still have to dry off. Otherwise, you'll still be soaking wet. In other words, the effect of what you were just in still lingers. So, there are good people out there who become atheists because they say, if these are the only people talking about the nature of the divine, and they are irrational, if what they say is inconsistent with evolution and development and what we see in our physical world, therefore there can't be a God, they become atheists. That is, that's terrible and wrong. Because the Logos is the nature of the divine, which is the source of rationality itself and can be understood, not believed, and you can even verify your understanding in direct experience. That's the highest experiences we can have. So if you are a materialist or a scientist and you care about evidence and experience, then you can't ignore the many, many, many experiences human beings have had in near-death experiences, in meditation experiences, in drug experiences, and so on and so on and so on, of these higher states of being. Now, you have to therefore recognize them. Oh, shit, these people have these experiences. It may be something that I have to have, well, it is something I have to have a look at. Yes, that's what we're after. It's the best. And the people who talk about it use the same kind of language to describe it. So that's materialism. And of course, that tradition of materialism, thinking that there's only the physical world, is from Aristotle, who didn't understand Plato. And Plato, of course, didn't reach the level of Socrates. So we have 3 levels of philosophy that we have currently, more or less. We have Socrates, that understands all the logos and how it's a reflection of the self. So we have the level of self that we're after, know thyself. We have the level of knowledge that Plato talked a lot about. And then, of course, Aristotle, who was Plato's student, didn't even recognize that. And so it's Aristotle's ignorance that our current world is, or our current understanding of education is based upon. We need to undo that. And so what a materialist or an Aristotelian might say is, well, those spiritual experiences, that's just physical chemicals shooting. So again, you have to ignore the most profound elements of it: consciousness, understanding, recognition, beauty, justice, goodness, all of the things that we learn in philosophy and metaphysics, and say, no, it's just chemicals. Right? Because you can damage the brain, and your ability to think through your brain becomes damaged. You can damage your eye, and your ability to see becomes damaged. You can damage your ear, and your ability to hear becomes damaged. Therefore, everything is caused by the physical. We would, of course, ask, hang on a second, is it your eye that sees, or is it through your eye that sees? And that way of reducing everything to its smallest component, which is what a materialist is taught to do, would be like saying, oh, this beautiful Rembrandt painting, that's nothing. It's just $4 worth of paints on a $10 canvas. That's all. Okay, it's a downward movement, reducing everything to its smallest, least significant components. It's a rejection of the mind. And of course, that is one reflection of the... Now, that's our education. We don't blame anyone for that, but the people who refuse to go through these steps of reasoning that we just went through now, I will have to ask why. Why? Because, as we can understand, all human problems are caused by belief, and belief is in conflict with understanding and is opposed to understanding. Then we can recognize the appeal of reductionism, reducing everything to small things, and materialism. Because that's 2 ways of attacking mind. And that's what belief does. So, not only do we have to learn the dialectic and apply it to the sorts of things we just did to see the necessity for even scientists and materialists recognize there are axioms they have to take for granted, like 1 and 1 is 2, and 4 take 2 is 2. And things that are equal to the same thing are equal to each other. You can't prove that in the physical world, but you need to accept it to do science. They also have to admit that, okay, what we are discovering about the world applies equally, always. It's not going to be on one planet 2 and 2 equals 7. So there has to be a scope, there has to be preconditions, and of course, if they're human, they will recognize things like beauty and justice and realize, hang on a second, I can't put beauty and justice in a test tube. I've never seen it in the physical world, but I recognize it. And they may even go further to say, actually, I've never seen sameness either. Where did I get the idea of sameness from? So all of these are ways of seeing the necessity and the beauty of the conditions, causes, preconditions that's even observed with materialists of the physical world. That's the transition from philomathesis, the love of learning, to philosophy, the love of wisdom. So that's what we do in philosophy. We want to understand that realm that exists prior to the physical world, for it to have the scope over the physical world, for it to cause the things and the laws and the patterns and the intelligibility of the physical world. Not just the physical world, but the non-physical, your mind. You can't put that in a test tube. But a scientist might come to you and say, no, you don't have a mind, it's just physical chemicals. That's crazy. They could say, oh, you don't have a self either. There's no one viewing your mind or viewing your physical senses. It's just physical senses. Terrible, terrible shit. That's a very, what's the word? Gross and sad position.
That's weird that you think that.
Very weird.
It's sad. And I'm sad for you.
It's sad. And we're sad for you. That's reductionism. Destroying all meaning. Now, that's not to say there isn't a physical expression of the higher. Sure, if you are happy, you can see, oh, there's more happiness chemicals in my brain. And even temporarily, you can induce a state of mind through messing with your brain chemistry. That's drugs. But of course, that only works for a little bit temporarily, has diminishing returns. If you're using messing with yourself physically to elucidate the states of mind, because diminishing returns, because it can give you a insight or can give you a look through the window, but it's not the door you walk through. What's the door we walk through if we want to be happy, not just temporarily, but eternally? If we want a better state of mind, what's the doorway? That's learning. And last time we've seen yet again that we are here to learn. In fact, learning is a necessary element to justice. For there to be justice, there has to be a kind of balance. The way you live now, you will pay the consequences, or you will experience the consequences of your justice or injustice, not in hell. There can't be a metaphysical existence of just torture, but in your reincarnation. The kind of life your soul chooses is based on your self-identity and the kind of life that you've lived in this life. But that's not enough for justice. There has to be a way of avoiding the bad and getting the good. That's learning. In fact, learning is the only thing you can take with you, because you can't take physical things, but you can take the learning and the practice or nurture of that learning into your soul with you. And as we said, that is what determines your reincarnation, but it also determines the level to which you can endure the brilliant light of being, or knowledge, that second state of being, after you die. The brilliant light of being, everyone experiences to some degree when they die. And the level of learning, and in particular, the application of that learning, the dialectic, to remove the false beliefs about self and reality. To the degree you've done that, which is the cause of your injustice, just as we said, belief is the cause of man's problems. Another way of saying that is belief is the cause of man's injustice. Therefore, if you uncover your own false beliefs that causes your own injustice, not only will you function better towards others, you'll be able to better endure the brilliant light of being, pure intelligence. And the extent to which you can endure that is the extent to which you develop. You have a better state of being. You're more intelligent and caring in this world, but also you'll have a better state of being in your next reincarnation. Why? Because in that brilliant light of being, you are seeing yourself. Well, you're seeing the manifestation of self. It's you. It's the reflection of you. That's what mind is. But you'll fear, I'm losing myself in this experience, to the extent you identify with your false image of yourself. yes, you'll lose your self-image, which is great because that's the cause of your suffering and injustice in this life and beyond. You want to lose it, that's the point. Now, the difficulty is many people have had that experience of being like Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, the story of Jesus, but while it can diminish the effect of your false beliefs because you've just seen yourself and you've remembered yourself, that's part of the experience, you recognize it, you go, oh my God, how could I have forgotten? So the voice that reflects your false beliefs and images that telling you that you're no good, you're a small bean, you're a bad noodle, it's going to have less of an effect now that you've seen that you are not a small bean or bad noodle. But of course, it's still going to be there because the activity of experiencing the good is different from the activity of removing the bad. Two different things. But what's fascinating is it's the same learning and skill, the dialectic, that's used for both. So the doorway through which we can walk to experience pure being is the dialectic, and equally so, the method of discovering our own false image and false beliefs, the cause of our own repeating blocks and suffering, is equally the dialectic. Only surfacing the false idea of the self, whereas the positive is knowing the truth about the self. Isn't that fascinating? So what? So there's one activity we're here to do, and it's the only thing that we can say rationally would be the meaning of life. If there is any justice, it has to be a kind of learning, and if there is any, in the fact that justice requires a learning to balance the causes and effects. It's no good just having the effect or the balance of having the effect of your injustice if you don't have a potential to learn and be better. But also, if there is a meaning of life, it has to transcend your physical world. Therefore, the meaning of life has to itself be a kind of learning and nurture of the soul. So two separate dialectics to come to the same conclusion that the meaning of life is the dialectic. And last time we had a look at the fact that it's a kind of learning that's different from the sort of the bullshit learning that really disappoints people when they go to school. And the difference is it will actually affect your state of being, your state of mind. And also we can see, and we talked about why specifically if it removes your problems and it opens you up to experiencing pure intelligence, which makes you smarter and kinder because it's the good, so you're able to act in a better way. And also if you recognize, it allows you to see through beliefs which cause you to see others as different and an enemy. So fascists or right-wingers, fascist Nazis and people who are the cause of problem, religious people, look at others and see difference. You're not the right religion. You're not a white person. You're not a rich person. And we're going to kill you or hurt you. So that's seeing differences based on your physical senses. So the stupidest people, shapes and colors. But it's the smartest, most intelligent people that can recognize the sameness. We're all the same mind. We're all the same self. That requires insight and intelligence. So it's no coincidence that the cruelest, most sadistic people are also the stupidest and most ignorant. We happen to live in a world where those cruel, ignorant people manipulate others through their own beliefs because other people haven't gone through the process of removing their beliefs, so they can be led around by their nose by fascists. So the people in charge of religion and politics are all the most ignorant and cruel people. Why? Simply because belief. That's it. They haven't gone through the process of learning that they're literally here to do. But once we recognize it, we can turn the ship around and have a much better world. And whether or not other people get on board, you can still do it for yourself. So cheers to you.
Bless you. Excuse you. Bless you. Bless you.
So, now, how does it have that effect on our state of being? Well, we looked at the metaphor of the body. You have various different parts of your body and organs, They each do their own function, but when they work together with the same single-minded focus, the health and unity of the body, while they're each doing their part, they share a single focus and goal and purpose, bringing them into a unity, and that unity gives rise to a higher order of function or a greater whole.
I'm cute. Like it's cutie pie. Bless you. Excuse you. Bless you. Bless you.
Okay, I was hoping for the more holes, the better drop, but I didn't get it. A greater whole, consciousness. And that greater whole can therefore seek even greater goals, purposes, or the ultimate purpose, our destiny. The reason or the ultimate goal to which we're all headed. That's what that would mean. So we see that with our consciousness and our body. Similarly, your soul, the thoughts you have, the motivations you have, the goals you have, can be all over the shop. They can be going in all many different directions, pulling you this way, putting yourself down, building yourself up, all sorts of stuff going on. And it's that thinking can even cause pain and suffering and, anxiety and negative states of mind. There's lots that can happen within the soul. But using that same principle, here we are using analogy, using insights of the lesser to gain it, or using observations of the lesser to gain insights into the higher. That's anagogic, or not reductionism, moving down. There is no people. It's just skin and bones. It's just, Socrates talked about his teachers being like this back in even 2,500 years ago. Socrates said, my teachers said, well, I was curious about why we did things and what's the cause of things and what's the meaning of things. And they said, oh, it's bones and sinews, like muscles and bones. That's the cause of things. And Socrates says, I didn't like that, because while I do have muscles and bones, I'm here because I think that it's good to be here. I consider it more good and beautiful to be in this conversation right now. Otherwise, dem bones and muscles would be boning and muscling themselves out the door. So we had to go and find a better teacher. And then even that teacher, he said, he was better because he recognized, there's mind and beauty and goodness and those things I just mentioned that are actually of a higher order and actually a more motivating cause. But then even they quickly deteriorated into materialism. So Socrates had to go off and do some learning on his own, thankfully, because now we can learn from him. So that's reductionism, moving down to the smallest observable things. Hello, welcome, Sus. How are you? Welcome. Glad to see you there in the chat. Oh, I had a first trial music stream today. I had to get my new mixer. I've got 2 mixers on the go. No gym yet. Gym is next. But I did do music earlier. Gym is after. Yeah, it was a test stream just to get my levels right. So if I have energy after the gym, I might do another music stream. Otherwise, after that, tomorrow. But yeah, and if there's, and if you're around, jump on in and request some songs. I'll stay tuned, you promise. Yeah, great. Well, you didn't miss much because it was just a test thing, but I think I'm sounding okay. Yeah. So that's exciting. I think it sounds pretty good. Right, so, yes, and playing music, I was strumming strings, and there was a piece of wood that resonated those strings, and some electronical pickups that converted that string movement into an electrical impulse that my mixer, 2 of them, converted into format that could be sent through the internet to your speakers. Hooray! Thank you so much. So, is that what music is? Of course not. That's reductionism, reducing it to its components or smallest pieces. Now we are going upward. The word for that is anagogic. So we can look at things that we can observe and imagine, okay, what would be the principle? Vibrational sorcery. Wee, that's a cute one. That's a raccoon in shock. That's a really good one. Yes, I'm a bard. And in the evenings, I'm a wandering minstrel. Because I walk around with my guitar sometimes. You know, I think I'm a bard. I play my music to buff you. To give you buffs. Philosophy buffs. And after the stream, I'm going to the gym to get philosophy buffed. That's a dumb joke. Forget about that. I didn't say that.
Where's the passion, dude?
I've been a bad little girl.
I was bad for saying that joke.
Whore.
Yes, I deserve that. So, anagogically moving upward from observing our physical body. I need to get a better camera. I'm using my webcam, so I'm quite close, but I can't do much flexing. See? You can't see the entirety of my flexing because I'm using a webcam. I need to improve my streaming setup with a proper webcam. Just trust me, I have a sleeper build. That's what they call it, I think. Sleeper build. That means I sleep all day. No, that's not true. I don't like sleeping because I have so much to do. I do like sleeping though. That's where you get your dreams. Yes, so one of my goals is to be able to afford a proper webcam. So let's look forward to that. Then you can see all my philosophy muscles. I don't know. Is there anything in that? No?
They're completely lying to you. They're completely lying.
Sorry, I'm lying to you completely.
Whore.
Sorry. Just as the parts of our body, sleeping is a gateway to dreams, but reality is a dream, so maybe it's a breakthrough to a more awakening. Yes, you can make the argument because there's greater intelligibility in our dreams in that it reflects the problem you're specifically here to see and helps you in your development through understanding, while like the physical world, but different from the physical world, it's more directed to only you and more immediate, and there's more use of analogy, there's more metaphor, there's more similes, there's more states of mind. Dreams do the same thing that your life is, but with a much higher degree of intelligibility. And if the physical world is like a dream, it has a temporary reflective existence of being, which itself is a reflected existence of self, so it goes even higher than that, then you could say dreams are more real. So a very good point. So long as you don't get that benefit, you don't get that justice, you don't get that learning, unless, of course, you apply the dialectic to it. Same activity, a single activity. Why is that important? Well, just as each of the parts of your body can be unified together in a single activity and purpose, giving rise to a greater whole and a greater dimensional, what's the word? Oh, there's a word for it. It doesn't cause consciousness, but it creates the conditions for it to manifest. Emergent. The emergent principle of consciousness, which allows you to think about your goals better and reach even higher goals. So too, if your soul or mind can be unified, not the many distracting tangents of your beliefs and blocks and pathologos that manifest as all of these thoughts that come up and can annoy you all day. No, a single-minded focus and purpose and goal, then your mind can be unified in a similar analogical way, which would give rise to a higher emergent level of whole, a greater dimension of consciousness or self. In principle. So we would have to say, okay, what's the thing that we can focus on at all times? Well, hang on a second. If the way of unpacking your dreams is the dialectic, if the way of reaching the truth about justice and beauty is the dialectic, if the way of realizing the true nature of self and state of self is through the dialectic, if the way of removing injustice and problems is the dialectic, both individually and collectively, and if anything that you do, whether it be music, math, or anything else that is understandable and follows a hierarchical ordered structure, reflects the dialectic. To do that, you need the dialectic. That means you can have a single activity of the dialectic that you can function through, focus on, develop and learn at all times. So there's our single-minded focus, but it has to be a purpose. Hang on a second. Have we said over and over that the purpose or meaning to our existence here is to learn, necessarily to balance the cause and effect of justice? Necessarily because that's the only thing we take with us? What's the method of learning? Oh, it's the dialectic too. So it's a single-minded activity that you can do at all times. That's your purpose and goal. Therefore, you can unify your soul in a single activity, giving rise to a higher state of consciousness. That state of consciousness Socrates calls inner justice. We call it sometimes being in the zone, or the ideal of the samurai. It's described as functioning perfectly and most appropriately for your situation without any thinking or planning, with the full force of your being. The ideal of the samurai. So samurais train for that, so they can function immediately with all of their energy, no distractions or no psychic parasites, like the pathologos, beliefs and images, siphoning off your life energy, without thinking or planning. So you can respond to things that are out of your line of sight. Even. Imagine that. I mean, you don't have to imagine. Many animes have characters, either heroes or villains, who awaken that level of awareness, battle awareness or something like that. In fact, the main villain in the latest Demon Hunter movie that's at the cinema, he had that battle awareness. I saw it a few weeks ago. Without having to think or plan. Now, that's what we've been talking about as well. You see through it. You see through your understanding. You see through the language you've learned. You see through mathematics or music, if that's the thing that you've been learning. So you see through the dialectic or logos. Now, the difference is you're not in the zone on the basketball court doing the three-pointers and making everyone say,
The primary purpose of pools is not to murder. It is for enjoyment and cooling off.
right. Hey, there's, what's his name? Poole. Damn it. He's a three-point shooter. He used to be in the Warriors. He was a splash brother. Jordan Poole. Hey, there's Jordan Poole shooting his three-pointers. He's on fire. The difference is we're not seeing through our basketball skills, we're seeing through the dialectic. In other words, we are not just functioning most appropriately for the situation, we're in the right situation. We're doing the right thing, in that we are helping living and non-living beings. Well, living beings, souls, because it's through the dialectic you can help people, do those things we mentioned, understand their dreams, remove their problems, and reach their excellence. But also, you can apply the same principles that you can awaken through or understand through the dialectic of justice and beauty and order and harmony to care for the non-living world. So it's also, so we could say that state of being would be the ideal standard for every spiritual leader and politician, to function most appropriately for the development of all people under their care. That's what an art means. So the ideal of the samurai, but one step higher because it's the dialectic we're seeing through, not samurai skills that we're seeing through. And that's a state called inner justice. So, pretty neat that it's a single focus that is the meaning of life, and it's a learning, but also neat that it's it has that effect on us. And anyone who's been to college after high school might recognize how shit it is to realize, oh hell, it's just more rote crap. All of the deeper ideas or cooler ideas I had in high school that I wasn't given an avenue to explore and develop, my higher insights, and how the thing that I was studying came together into a greater unity which had an effect on my state of being. Surely at university we can talk about that. Fuck no, they don't. Why? Aristotle. And of course the positions, the authorities of the church and the politicians who want to rule over people to enact their ignorance, rather than an artful person who sees it's their responsibility to guide people because they have the art of the dialectic that can benefit people. So, the tradition of Aristotle. After killing Socrates, the religious and political figures of Athens murdering Socrates. Again, always the same thing. The human problem is always the one thing, it's belief, which is in opposition to the logos. If it's someone who masters the logos like Socrates, yes, it's the believers that will kill him. And what's the two professions you can have without any understanding and without any knowledge? Politician and clergy. I believe that black people need to be murdered, says the right wing, says the Nazis. I believe that Jeebus is a thing. I believe that Lord Zeno is the king. See? Nonsense. And what do? Can't help anything. You can't actually help anyone through belief, but you can hurt people. Sadism. So sadism is the cognitive state of development of belief, where you don't recognize your job is to do that single thing that we're here to do, master the dialectic, and instead pretend you're already there. I was born knowing everything because my daddy's the best daddy. So I'm going to be a politician. I'm going to be a preacher. Right? I'm going to cosplay a Noah and harm people while pretending to be a Noah. That's sadism, because they enjoy it, because they think it's what it means to be wise. Okay, always the same thing. Beliefs cause problem, understanding resolves it. Therefore, the art and learning of understanding the dialectic is the thing we're here to do, but also pretty neat that it is a kind of learning, unlike regular school, where it does have a state, an effect on your state of being, bringing you into that state of focused, meaningful unity, giving that emergent, having that emergent function of giving rise to a greater whole. That's that state of being we call the ideal of the samurai, or being in the zone, or in philosophy, inner justice. That's where we are in the book. Holy fuck, was that pretty good? Was that good? All I just did was just reflect everything we've been reading in this book. Oh my god. Can we say this book bangs? See how good this book is? It's such a good book. Solving human problems, finding the meaning of life, understanding justice, and here's a new thing for your ass. Psychic development to the ideal of the samurai. I'm going to keep using ideal of the samurai because inner justice seems I don't know, seems elusive or doesn't, esoteric. But everyone likes to be a samurai. And maybe you've experienced that in some time. Musicians talk about hitting notes that their fingers couldn't hit or something like that. And playing sport. Some people have talked about, well, and I've seen it, catching a cricket ball behind your head somehow with your bad hand, like not with your dominant hand, with the other hand. Or reacting instantaneously to something when you weren't even looking in the right direction. That's state. But better, because you're not doing 3-pointers, You are benefiting your soul and all living and non-living beings. Is that neat? I think so. What do you think, Emma?
The more holes, the better.
See? Emma agrees. Greater emergent whole, and the more holes, the better.
Imagine people changing their positions and improving for the better.
Improving for the better. So, what a banger of a book. What a absolute banger of a book. I do dramatic zooms now. So, on that note, let's jump in and keep reading. Here's the book. Are you ready to read? Dramatic zoom. Reading is exciting. Reading is exciting. There you go. That's nonsense. Nonsense.
It's a total shit show.
Exactly.
Is this chat full of dumb cons?
No, just me. All right. Let's jump in. Okay, so this dialectic that we've been talking about, we are now applying it to the two most essential and fundamental ideas that are causal of the idea of punishment, which is injustice. That there is a ruling God or divinity in the afterworld who passes judgment over the souls of the dead and assigns rewards and punishment. Bring a closed system of ideas that brings to birth the ideal of justice. Actually, that doesn't necessarily imply punishment. Oh, it does. That's punishments. Yeah, let's keep reading, see where it goes. What differences are there between making mistakes or doing something incorrectly, or being wrong about something, or sin? Now, in geometry, in order to correct someone, you have to yourself grasp it as a whole, but also grasp the mistake in the part. And it's not that you. So, for example, with geometry, if you do a geometrical equation, that's how you say it, badly, it's not because you are doing geometry in an evil way. Yes. Wait till I apply the cosine to the factorial of the Pythagorean theorem. Yes, then everyone will suffer. That's not what happens. You just fail to understand or apply the principle that you are supposed to apply in geometry. Now, if you're a teacher of geometry, you can recognize the whole of it and recognize where they missed the part. But this is why that human suffering is caused by belief. There are people who don't understand the whole destiny of mankind and therefore do not understand where we are missing the mark in a part and pretend they do while enacting out their own false beliefs. These people can't actually correct the development of mankind. That would be an actual politician. All they can do is inflict cruelty and suffering in punishment. It's fucked. Whether you're a parent or a politician or a member of a religious whatever. It's fucked. You are lying, you don't know the whole, you don't recognize the missing part, and you don't see the principle that they fail to apply. That's why evil or heathen or heretic or goyim or all of these words that imply evil and justify sadistic, unjust punishment in religion. Equally so for politics. You're a woke. You're a Antifa. You're a radical leftist by saying people should have food. We're going to send you to death camps, currently happening in our world. Parents, you're a bad kid. You're a naughty child. You have original sin. All of this is the same thing. The lying about being a actual knower, whether it's a parent, a priest, or a politician, explaining problems with a stupid mush brain, baby brain, slop brain bullshit of evil to justify sadistic punishment, which is always unjust and never helps learning, and it's learning that we're here to do, and it's learning that solves problems. It's always the same thing. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And we got that from this book. Isn't this book great? So therefore, if your idea of evil is only restricted to moral problems, you can't help with geometry or anything actual, it's just your own bullshit idea of morality, so it lacks scope. The idea of evil as an explanation for making mistakes lacks scope. You can't apply it to math, you can't apply it to music, you can't apply it to geometry, you can only apply it to moral problems. You made that mistake because you are evil.
We definitely are not born with a starter kit of beliefs, buddy. Religion is shoved into children's brains forcibly through indoctrination, and if it's any kind of fundamentalism, it's essentially child abuse. Even if a kid was to the conclusion totally out of their own accord that there is a divine entity that created everything, it sure as fuck wouldn't be the malicious sociopathic god that you worship.
There's our friend Dr. Richard Explains. Professor Richard Explains from YouTube. Now he has done a recent video which again falls into that trap of, oh, if these religious peoples are the only ones talking about soul and consciousness and the divine and metaphysics, and they are terrible, sadistic, projecting their beliefs while cosplaying the Noah, because he grew up in an Aristotelian educational format, he would conclude, therefore, there is no such thing. Now, that's that fifth state of being, a massive difference. It's the opposite. They're cosplaying the Noah by not understanding the whole of mankind, which a politician needs to do, or the whole of the human soul, which a spiritual person needs to do. But also recognize the parts, so you can see a deviation within the part that you can therefore correct. Therefore, any spiritual teacher or guru that lacks this apprehension of the whole of the logos, has an understanding of the parts of the logos, and can use the activity of logos, dialectic, to correct the person and bring them into a greater harmony, which they should be able to understand themselves and experience as a whole themselves, allowing them to function and feel in a better way. If you don't have that logos, you are not a real guru. Just as if you don't have those exact same principles, you are not a geometry teacher. In other words, you need to be able to not only correct that, but the person themselves needs to understand where they made the mistake. You never say, oh, just believe me, bro, like Eastern gurus do, or who like the logos, or religion. They don't even try to correct you. So At least in Eastern spirituality, they actually want you to develop and have greater states of experience. But in Western religion, it's just do as you're told, be my slave. That's it. But again, the student has to understand why they made the mistake and what would be the correction. They need understanding. Not only that, they need to feel for themselves in their body the joy of insight. They need to see that they were able to balance the equation, and they get a good feeling from that. And as they continue, they start to see through that understanding. They continue to have insights like that, which can culminate into a greater sense of well-being. That is the model for gurus and politicians. But for politicians, it's humanity as a race. For gurus, it's individual souls within their journey within multiple lifetimes, or through multiple lifetimes. It's just the same thing. And it has to be, because that's the logos, principles. And if you don't do it, you have the sick schools of, like, you know, boarding schools from the boomer age, where ignorant fuckers just torturing kids for their sadistic pleasure. And then you have this generation of boomers who are, you know, cruel and mean and very willing to abuse anyone that Trump says, oh, you get to abuse them, you get to abuse them. So they become Nazis and fascists. So they can play out the same punishment they suffered from their earliest teachers. Equally so, those politicians, we have this terrible capitalist dystopian hellscape because, again, lack the model of art. For politicians, and of course, we have the many mass murders and crusades and genocides done in the name of religion. Same principle, always the same principle. Are you venerating belief, or are you developing the dialectic understanding? Just those two things, just that simple. But as we saw in the book, there is that old problem. If you want to make a teaching private so it can earn the title of being esoteric, all you have to do is state it clearly and simply, and you'll find no one will get it. So, as clearly and simply as we can see it from this awesome ass book, no one will get it.
Disgusting. I'm so disgusted.
If you're experiencing a mental health episode, we don't want to have to see that.
What's this one? Okay. Dramatic zooms. Alright, so can you see the whole? Can you see the parts? Can you see where the person made the mistake in the part? Can you correct that part? Can the other person themselves understand why they missed the mark and what is the principle they failed to apply? And can they feel the joy in seeing the insight together as it comes into a whole? If not, you're not a teacher. By the way, does the idea of evil and punishment do any of those things? No. Therefore, fucked. Does it remove the conditions needed to do that learning? Yes. Therefore, double fucked. Stop doing evil and punishment. No, punishment only teaching would help overcome such. Not punishment, only teaching would help overcome mistakes. Mistakes and errors are correctable by gaining a better understanding or knowledge of the subject. So we could say, loosely speaking, understanding is the parts, knowledge is the thing as the whole. Because that's the model. Whoops. Where is it? Here we go. That's the model of the logos we are using to understand the dimensions of reality. In the physical world of becoming, we develop an apprehension of the logos through understanding, or dianoia, dialectic. But it prepares us to experience it all at once. The brilliant light of being, or separating yourself from the body and seeing yourself. But of course, it can be a scary or overwhelming experience if you don't have that understanding in their back pocket. Ditto. Dancing ditto. And you can experience the logos all at once. But of course, the logos is the intelligibility of that experience, and recognizing that all of the things that you've learned about and understanding is that in part form. Same and different, whole and part, like and unlike, ideas of beauty and justice. These are all playing out in time what you experience as a whole. So knowledge is seeing it as a whole, understanding is seeing it in parts or through time. And of course, both of them has to have a source. So our question is, in what way does the self have the logos if you can experience the logos as a whole in being and in parts through understanding? And if it's the self that experiences both of those things through the soul, what does it say about the self that it has the logos inherent prior to experience and prior to understanding that it has the logos? And what does it say about the self that it has the capacity to understand the logos? It has the capacity to apprehend the logos all at once in experience. In other words, there must be some there must be the spaces within the self for those shaped blocks to fit in. There has to be a triangle shaped for that to take a triangle puzzle piece. It has to be a square shape for us to take the square in it. But the puzzle pieces or the blocks are all of experience and all of understanding. The logos. So we have a logos-shaped capacity for apprehension and experience, and also it's the cause of the logos. That's the big mystery of the self that we're after. That's the purpose of our life, or of evolution into consciousness, or evolution itself. Okay. There's a bit of a reminder. Wait, I forgot that I changed my buttons so I can do zooms. I forgot. So now the book is this button here. So I can do a zoom. So, mistakes are correctable by understanding and knowledge of the subject. Then does sin fall into this class of correctable things? So, you're asking if the failure of understanding gives birth to sin. Yes, the failure of understanding of what is right and lawful bring about the need for instruction or for punishment. So, you break the law. Do you torture someone and hang them and put them in a prison cell and take all their money and punish them for breaking the law, or do you instruct them on how they can better meet their needs in harmony with the law? Now, it might turn out that they were never able to, because they live in a fascistic society where the laws are themselves unlawful or unjust. Capitalism, fascism, Nazism, they were never able to obey the law because they were Jewish and they're a Nazi. They were never able to obey the law because you're a MAGA and they happen to have brown skin. So you need to change the laws. That's important. So, make a mistake. Always a failure of understanding. Do we punish or do we instruct? Okay, the question. Now, Jesus says, well, the way of correcting people is listening to the voice of the divine. Now, we might agree with him, but not in the way that he means. Not by belief in divine inspiration, but rather understanding, because the divine is the Logos. But it's understanding that allows you to learn. So, to understand the full reach of punishment, or punishment in the extreme, you need the idea of hell, or the house of Hades. But so that's what Orifice is saying. Rocking bee. Why is there rocking bee? Oh, dancing love hearts. But Mustachios urged us to consider the demands of justice, since justice alone can force upon us the need to seek truth that we so sorely need to see. Wait, that's a cute one. Let me have a look at this. It's a DJ cat with disco lights. No, rave lights. Very cool. What is the... Wait now. Is that a cat rocking out in Hades? So, Mustachio says, let's understand the demands of justice before we tackle the problem of... of Hades. That's where we are. Let's keep reading. Jesus. What are the demands of justice, Socrates? I haven't heard that phrase before.
I haven't heard that phrase before.
Socrates. Well, there's a Socrates. Wait. Hang on. What's going on? If there's a Socrates talking, there shouldn't be a Socrates listening. What's this? What is going on here? What the heck? Okay, I got something. I gotta fix something. Hang on. Mustachios urge me to recognize that with our way of reasoning, we just might be able to bring to light some answers to these questions, but it would be seeing it only in general terms and not in particulars. He said if you want to really discuss the idea of justice, then you should find a perfect example of the acts of a just man and a unjust man. An idea should include its opposite, Mustachios said. The mustached one. Equally, he said, that to balance the discussion, it is necessary to find a woman. Ooh.
Disgusting. I'm so disgusted.
Sorry. Find a woman who stands above all others as a model for an ideal woman.
Bless you. Excuse you. The more holes, the better.
Exactly.
They're completely lying to you.
Is this chat full of... Don't be disgusting.
Yes, this chat is full of don't be disgusting with the inappropriate sound drops. My apologies. Just as the just man should be a model for the ideal man. Okay, just man and just woman. There is difference. I like those distinctions, says Jesus. Did the other sages add to it? I would have expected Homer or Hesiod would have something to say. It was after the Mustachio's remarks that Homer smiled and said,
I have just what you want in my Iliad. I have the worst of men, Achilles. And in my Odyssey, the best of women, Penelope. Look no further.
Is what Homer said. Wow. With Achilles, we have the worst of men, turning around and becoming the hero of the age. So best of women, Penelope. Worst of men, Achilles. The worst of men, Achilles, turning around and becoming the hero of the age. In one man, Achilles, we have the worst becoming the best. So we get a 2-for-1. It's a
win-win.
It's a win-win. A model of the worst and the best in one fella. With women, we learn the gods sing praises, not of Achilles or Odysseus, but for Penelope. The god sings praises for Penelope. Penelope.
That one's perfect and exactly the case.
Exactly the case. Penelope's perfect. Homer offered a prize if we could answer why the greatest hero, Hercules, could be at the same time both in the house of Hades and feasting in heavens with the gods. So, can we answer that and get a prize from the gods? Well, so far we have gone through a dialectic, and I guess this would be necessary to accept the prize. You would have to do a dialectic as to why metaphysically there can't be a dimension of eternal suffering if the higher dimensions are the idea of the good and the good itself. You can't have good and evil or good and punishment. You'd have to do a dialectic to show why punishment can't be a thing metaphysically, because as it's obviously unjust and harmful in the physical world, it can't be a metaphysical principle. That would be contradictory. And you would have to make a dialectic to show why justice has to play out not in actual Hades, but on earth through our reincarnations. We see many people suffering injustice every single day, every minute of every day. But we also see people not learning the dialectic and being unjust themselves. So, through reincarnation, we can see a balance of cause and effect playing out, along with the fact that it is only on Earth, it seems, it's on Earth that we are able to learn to overcome the bad and reach the good. You'd have to make a dialectic to show why both reincarnation and learning are necessary for justice. But we're also carrying the idea as, okay, let's say you do that, and you do learn the dialectic, and you have practiced it all the time and unified yourself towards it, in it, seeing through it. What's that state of being called understanding? That is a question we have been carrying for a long time. Because we have those 5 states of mind that we have recognized so far. A massive difference. Materialists or modern Democrats who say there is no truth, there is no principle, just let the fascists take over and roll over. The modern Democrats. Massive difference, strict dualists. If there's a whole, nothing to do with me. If there's a soul, nothing to do with me. If there's a divine, nothing to do with me. If there are principles of justice and beauty that will always apply, nothing to do with me. Number 5. Now, by the way, no one's in just one of these things all the time. We can progress through them and move in and out of them. In fact, the study of the 4 main categories you're in as your personality type is the cube. There is a cube that reflects government or ages in history, and also personality types, where there are 4 dominant ones in different arrangements. But that's a talk for another day. So, massive difference, a conflict between, belief is number 4, the source of problems. Now you could say 5 is the condition for problems, just as the modern Democrats were the conditions that the absolute worst kind of injustice kind of a person like Donald Trump got in. So the 5 is the condition for 4. Therefore, don't be a 5. Don't say everything's relative to opinion. Just let the Nazis kill some people. Who's to say? Religion is good so long as you don't act through your religion. It's fine. That's the condition for the religious fascism or political fascism to take over. Belief. Belief has a feeling state. You are in conflict within the rational, the logos pairs. You're apart in conflict with the whole. You have to accept limits, and you hate people who are free. That's belief. So it's a state of conflict within the soul and conflict in your functioning. But also the power to harm is taken as the feeling of knowing. That's sadism. So the feeling state of belief is marked by either internal conflict, or when you are inflicting that on others, that state of sadism, sadistic. Knowledge is to grasp the logos as a oneness out of time, eternity, and we have all of the positive descriptors to talk about that. Bliss, beauty, knowingness, eternity, that's what it feels like. And therefore that quote from Socrates, that's often misquoted. Socrates says, because I know knowledge, I'm not going to mistake it for anything else. And if that's the description of what it feels like to be in that state of knowledge, then you wouldn't mistake it for anything else, would you? Our goal is the state of self, which is kind of described in negatives, because everything we describe positively of that is transcended by the self. It's not bliss, it's not beauty, it's not eternity, but not in the negative, but in a transcendent way. So, and that's the puzzle. Can we use the logos to understand a whole that transcends this kind of a whole? A freedom that transcends this kind of a freedom. That's the puzzle of the first hypothesis, or the self. That's our goal. That's the big puzzle. It's the one we're building towards. But we are also in this book trying to understand the state of mind of understanding. It wasn't given in that same section. Now we're building towards it with this ideal of the samurai. If you've ever been in the zone, reflect on it. What was it like? Acting perfectly without thinking or planning, with the full force of your being, most appropriate for the circumstances. What was that like? Because that seems to be the state of dialectic, logos, understanding in time. So that's our question. So we're following and unifying the logos, not out of time with knowledge, but in time. Understanding, and in our relationships, love and logos. Philodianoia. So that's our question. Now we got a clue earlier, because as it's the same logos, this is analogy, same logos, different relationships that categorize the different cognitive states that people can be in. We have a massive difference. There were strictly dualists. They only have the lesser. The modern Democrats, the it's all relative. Let everyone have their opinions. Surely no harm can come from people having sadistic opinions or beliefs. Surely no harm can come from there being billionaires who get to play out their pathologos. Okay? Democrats. The modern authority of people in authority that are disconnected. Belief, conflict between the two. I'm always restless. In conflict with people who are at peace. I'm always limited. I can't watch Harry Potter because preacher said so. And I am fighting out against. I'm joining a Facebook group to put down to cancel Harry Potter or whatever. I'm a part, and I want to blow up the whole of mankind. So that's a conflict between the two. Knowledge is the greatest positive of both all at once. The question is of the self. What's the way of using the logos to recognize the state of self? That's not for now. But the one that we're missing is understanding. And we did say understanding was, in the book it was, to have your state of being as the whole while functioning most, not negatively like believers, but providentially, intelligently, and caringly. Providence. Where does providence come from? Being, because that's intelligence itself, and it's the good itself, and it's recognizing the sameness of all life. Therefore, all of the conditions for care, empathy, art, the word for that is providence. So to be in a state of whole while functioning most ideally and providentially to the parts. You do the same for all of them. In other words, our state of being is free, unlimited, while being able to help people who are limited by their own beliefs. So it's a kind of state and functioning. That's the clue we got earlier in the book, which is neat because here we have Socrates saying that Homer offered a prize if we could answer why the greatest hero could be at the same time both in the house of Hades and feasting with the gods in heaven. In other words, what's Hades? There isn't a real hell, but where do we play out the implications until they flitter away like shadows of our false images of self? Where do we suffer the consequences of injustice? Reincarnation on Earth. The house of Hades is Earth. It seems a mythological representation that we can only see if we use the dialectic to show it, which we've done, but you need to do it yourself to make it your own. But how can you be still on planet Earth, surrounded by all these zombies playing out their pathologos zombie virus of false belief, trying to eat the brains of people like Socrates and hate the logos and fight against understanders, the very people who will help them? How do you be like Hercules, the greatest hero?
You're a wizard,
You're a wizard, Harry. But at the same time, be in heaven, feasting. The only clue we have from the book to answer that is, well, everything we've said about Hades being on Earth, justice being required for learning, the learning being the dialectic being a state of being that's a single-minded focus, and also your purpose, the two of which can unify your soul in a single meaningful activity, which can give that emergent whole of a greater state of mind. That greater state of mind would be the whole or heaven. Your state of being in eternity with the gods, because the gods, as we've seen earlier, is a mythological, metaphorical personification of the principles of metaphysics, which is the whole, which is being. So your state of being is this, the whole, the same, at rest, timeless, out of time, completely unlimited or infinite. Whereas your functioning can be helping people who are blocked, the parts, the people who are different, the people who are in time and in motion. So you have to take all of those pieces together that we've been building up all through the text so far to put an essay together to win the prize from Homer. State of being and functioning. Why? Not just why, but using the dialectic to show how necessarily this would have to be the state of being we're after, called understanding or dianoia. Also, it's the ideal of the samurai or justice, inner justice. That emergent whole where you can be both functioning ideally to the parts while being a state of being outside. If you can do that, share it with us in the Discord. You can join the Discord, there's a link below. Have fun. And if you do, we will send an email to the estate of Homer and see if you win the prize. But that's the game, right? Like, it seems like it seems to be the state of mind that we're after. To be as a state of being, feasting in the heavens with gods, while functioning still, so long as you're in a body, with the people suffering their demons, metaphorically, their pathologos beliefs. If you did it, you would be functioning as an ideal person, not just a hero that saves one rec center from the evil capitalist who wants to build a petrol station and take away the breakdancing hall for the kids. No, the hero, because you are functioning in a way that can solve all problems. Dialectic. So the greatest hero, therefore, would be you. Hercules would be a representation of the greatest hero, that state of being. So what we can say is the ideal samurai is also Hercules. At the same time, in the House of Hades, saving the day while having a state of being with the gods. Interesting?
Wow.
Is it? Interesting! I hope so. And I pushed all the wrong buttons, so I need to turn my music back on because I was trying to not look down at my MIDI device for the dramatic effect. Bring in Jeevers. Again, I find this way of proceeding very interesting. You ask if the most wicked of men, one totally steeped in an arrogance that far exceeds that of all men, could turn around and discover the roots of his folly and become the ideal for all mankind. Imagine. Then you were asking if there is a woman. Oh. So free of sin, that's Jesus' word, that she can become a perfect model for all women to come. A woman that is a perfect model for all women to come. Imagine such a woman. Through these, you want to see how reward and punishment play out in Hades. The sage Homer, the most illustrious of poets, sang the song that answered our questions. I see that in my joyous contemplation I missed those wondrous talks. Did Homer identify the worst man in the House of Hades so that we could learn more about man's fate? What did it reveal? First, we asked if it is true that punishment always follows a failure of learning. Is what is called evil or bad acts the consequence of not knowing what should have been done? Is there a punishment for ignorance that cannot be overcome with learning? For if so, there is some ignorance more powerful and pervasive than any wisdom. This is the big one. Even the most sadistic fuckheads who want to justify punishment, not of them, by the way, everyone, they want to be the ones doing the punishment, will say, okay, lots of things you can learn about, but there are just some things you can't learn. You can only go so far, and then you have to start murdering Palestinian babies. You can only go so far, then you have to start making concentration camps for immigrants. You can only go so far, then you have to start bombing people, or spanking people, or putting kids in detention, or whatever the fuck. Which means that can only be the case if... Now, first of all, on its own merits, it doesn't help because it only causes further suffering and it prevents anything good. But the only justification is there are some things that cannot be overcome. There is an ignorance that cannot be overcome with learning, which means that there is an ignorance more powerful and pervasive than wisdom. Or is it the case that no ignorance can stand the light of wisdom and survive? And the model I like to think of is the dog nanny. There is a famous dog trainer called Cesar Millan who is able to rehabilitate dogs. And he was getting very popular on TV for a while. And then there was a copycat named the dog nanny, a British lady who tried to do the same thing. But she was different than Cesar Millan because there were some dogs she wasn't able to train out of the problem that they had learned. And she said, they're just bad dogs, they have to be put down. Cesar Millan never did that. The dog nanny did that because she couldn't admit that she was ignorant. It wasn't that she's ignorant and can't help the dog, it's just that it's a bad dog. So the dog nanny murdered dogs she couldn't help, while someone who actually knew how to help dogs, Cesar Millan, never did. That's a great illustration of this principle. So it's not the ignorance of the dog, it's the ignorance of the person pretending to be a teacher when they're not. Belief, Trump, Putin, Netanyahu, Hitler, your local priest, preacher, minister, imam, rabbi, name it. You'll find a laundry list as long as your arm of titles for people who do not have a mastery of the Logos, yet claim to be speaking for God. The root cause of all human tragedy, injustice, mass murder, genocide, inequality, and suffering. It's not a difficult thing to understand. Believers don't have understanding and knowing. They are in conflict with those two higher cognitive stages, but they want to be it, and instead of learning, they try and save the loyalty to their upbringing and pretend they can't actually help. So instead of reflecting on themselves and realizing, I don't know how to help this dog, they kill humans. We are living in a world of dog nannies. For a just world, we need Cesar Millans. That's the question on the table. Is there some ignorance that you have to just murder a child for? Or is it the case that no ignorance can stand the light of wisdom? And if we have a model from Homer of the absolute worst person, Hercules, being able to reflect through the dialectic applied to dream analysis and philosophical midwifery in order to solve his problem, do we have a model that shows that this is garbage? There is never a justification to murder people simply because you are ignorant while cosplaying the knower. Therefore, we can understand all human problems. Hooray. Jesus comes in and says, I do like your questions, and it speaks well for those heavenly discussions you have engaged in, which is another meta level of this book. How many people can you have this conversation with? I have found, whether it's because of, well, very few people have awoken to the Logos. Most people are therefore slaves to the zombie virus, which is specifically in opposition to the Logos. Therefore, it's very hard to find people to talk to about this, even though it's the very thing that helps us. And it's, as we saw, it's the one thing we're here to do and can unify our soul around, giving us a state of being in Hades while also being feasting with the gods. And it's also the thing that helps everyone. But not only is it difficult to find anyone to talk to about this, if you try, people would rather cosplay the Noah than be fucking curious and learn. Not everyone, but a large majority of people. Not because they are evil, but because they have a loyalty to their childhood upbringing beliefs and early teachers. That's it. Dogs. Blind loyalty. That's it. And of course, there was an evolutionary significance to that. It was before we had the ability to ousia, self-reflect, with Logos language. It was those who were most blindly loyal to whatever their tribe leader was that could stay together as a group, and the tribes that happened to survive the harsh environment of early evolution with a tribe around them, because they were blindly loyal, they didn't venture out of that cave and get eaten by saber-toothed tigers, survived to evolve. So in other words, the pathologos is the cause of all human problems in the present and will cause our extinction in the future, but it served a purpose. It was a solution to a problem in the past. That's it. Just as for every individual pathologos, every person's belief was a way of surviving their own upbringing, and therefore a solution to a problem in their past that no longer applies to their present. Therefore, it's the cause of their problems in the present and will be the cause of their fate and failure in the future. So, given those conditions, here we have this meta part of the text. Speaks well for those heavenly discussions you have engaged in. So Socrates is having this conversation in heaven, even though it's what we need to do in Hades to escape Hades, individually and as a species. So, but we have Twitch and YouTube, so we can find people to talk to who are on this channel, especially because I have wait. Especially because I have dramatic stings.
Wow.
See? How could you not be a fan? But yeah, this one hits home for me. As someone who spent their life trying to have these conversations with human beings and finding only one person with whom I can have this conversation, and he's passed away. So he's the author of this book. And yeah, and you can guess the responses from people who pretended to be interested only to hit their block and then become savages. Savage to sage, that's what we're doing here with the dialectic. So, interesting puzzle that I am seeing here. Socrates. In those discussions, we go further. We asked if there is a wisdom that can overcome evil. For then it would be foolish to punish for a lack of wisdom. That's the rub. That's the issue. That's the nub. Not the rub, the nub of it. Since the efforts of punishment always bring a particular kind of suffering, the effects, that dominates the soul, it deprives one of the freedom to discover the roots of their folly. So again, we've seen this before in the earlier dialectic we've done on punishment. What it does do, brings suffering, deprives the soul of freedom. In conclusion, you don't discover the roots of their folly. And we also did a positive dialectic. What does it do? What does it teach? It teaches you to not focus on yourself, but focus on authority figures, and not focus on truth and understanding development, but focus on not getting caught. So you have Trump, who's doing everything he is to always stay in power. So the whole No Kings protest that happened this week is because he's trying not to get caught for his crimes. He would need to do that and suffer the effects of another Trump tyrannical regime and all of the mass murdering and genocide he's supporting and doing, and the concentration camps and the taking away of basic. He's screwing over everyone. He's hurting everyone and killing lots and lots and lots of people, only to avoid punishment. We wouldn't need to suffer that if we didn't have punishment as a system of justice, which is of course injustice. So we have this idea: repeated repetition. That's a mark of the logos. Symmetry, repetition, a mark of beauty. So it's also significant. We're seeing it repeated. There's a significance. Socrates is repeating it. I find that very interesting. Surely, okay, what was interesting? Is there a wisdom that can overcome evil? For if it would, then it would be foolish to punish for a lack of wisdom. You don't punish people for not having an ice cream. Ice creams.
I'm too pure. Bless you. The primary purpose of pools is not to murder. It is for enjoyment and cooling off.
Right. If you don't get to swim in the pool, you don't punish someone because it's a good thing. They want it. So, it'd be foolish. And Jesus says, I find that very interesting. Surely all of those you mention must have known that there is the house of Hades. I would like to hear more about how these discussions went. Whoops. So, how did the discussions go? Now, we are having it in Hades. We're having it on Earth in this channel. And you can follow on Twitch and YouTube and join the Discord, link below. And you can even find a PDF of the text, or you can buy the book yourself. So, we are fortunately able to have these kinds of discussions in this channel. But for Socrates, they had to be had in heaven with the rare sorts of people like Orifice and Mustachios. But it's the big one, right? Problems are caused by belief. How are they enacted out? Through punishment. You can only have 1% of people owning everything and murdering and starving and torturing and enslaving the 99% if you have a violent system to maintain it. You can only justify violence by the idea that there is some ignorance you just can't have wisdom to overcome. You just have to kill a few people. Right? So punishment is used to smuggle in violence, which is used for oppression, and all that does is prevent us from learning what we here do, the dialectic. To apply that dialectic to removing those very false beliefs and loyalty to that violence, and instead develop wisdom, creating a state of justice where we can feast with the gods internally, and also as a race. We have the potential to create that race. We can be savages, bringing about the end of humanity, or we can be sages, bringing about this race of, well, heavenly feasting. So on that note, do you want to have a lovely feast with the gods in heaven? If so, I will join you next time on the stream. Thank you once again for joining me. Oh, and if you want to donate to the channel, that is very much appreciated. There is a link, and it's very, very helpful. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Damn it. Goodbye.